Hi everyone, welcome to this video about my personal journey with Divine Truth. My name is Maxine Bell. I've made this video because I've seen a few other videos out there by people following Divine Truth, trying to share the truth about their experiences with Divine Truth and found them helpful. And also because there's a lot of media information about Jesus, or AJ Miller as he's known, and Mary, or Mary Luck as she's known, and the Divine Truth teachings that's so false and so made up. Pretty much all of the media outlets have twisted and been very selective in the information they've shared about Jesus and Mary and the teachings, including implying that it's a cult when it's so not. And those of you who say, oh, well, she's in a cult, she's going to say that. But when I tell you a bit more about my journey, you'll understand why I can say that with conviction. So I came across Divine Truth teachings about 10 years ago. I was involved in the New Age movement at the time, had been for about 4 years, previously been involved with some other things, or just been reading books and investigating life and the deeper meanings of life. And so New Age movement was one of these things that came up. It seemed to be full of lots of weird and wonderful things, new things that I hadn't considered before. And so for a while it was quite fascinating. And then it started to get tricky, and sort of 2012 I was beginning to get a bit fed up with lots of it. I was starting to see through some of the things that people were saying weren't making sense. They were illogical, even unethical at times. And I came home one day quite cheesed off, and I shouted out into the sky up to God, though I didn't call him God. I didn't even use the word God at that time. Wasn't even sure if there was a God. But I shouted up to whoever was listening and said that I was fed up, and I wanted the absolute truth. I was sick of all the half-truths or lies, and just wanted the absolute truth. Didn't think anything of it, but about 6 hours later I got an email from a friend who said, what do you think of these videos? This is really interesting. And she sent me the link to the Divine Truth Secrets of the Universe videos. There's 4 of them, which Jesus made in about 2009, and they give a summary or an overview of the Divine Truth teachings. I sat down, watched the first one, immediately put the second one on, and so on, because the information was just too amazing to me. It just hit my soul. I got quite tearful. Of course, in the videos, Jesus obviously says who he is. Obviously his name in this life is AJ Miller, but he obviously is telling the truth, so he has to tell the truth of who he is, and he said he was Jesus. At the time, when I heard that, it didn't put me off listening, because the teachings were amazing. And obviously since then I've had to consider whether I think he's Jesus or not, which I'll talk about a bit later. But the teachings were too powerful. I'm a very creative person, but also very deep thinking, but also very logical. I like logic. I've always done logic puzzles all my life. I like things that make sense to me, and if they don't make sense to me, I'm always asking questions. When I was 17 and involved in Christianity for about 18 months, I got into trouble in the church for asking too many questions. I remember someone quoting at me, "Thou shalt not question the Lord thy God." So, excuse me. So it's not the first time. I am just very questioning. But these videos felt like they were answering so many questions I'd always had in my heart about how the universe is made, if it was made by a being, about why I'm here on this planet, about who I am as a human being, the fact that I have a soul, the fact that I had a soulmate, the fact that life continues after death, spirit worlds and spirits, which that information alone gave me some sense of some experiences I'd had all my life. So it was just fascinating, but it also was just really logical. But the key thing here as well, it was based on truth, like solid truth, absolute truth, not kind of personal truth, which the New Age movement is very keen on, and not based on the idea that you can have a half-truth or you can have a white lie. It was just very black and white. There's truth, and then there's not truth. There's truth and there's lies, or there's truth and there's false beliefs. It was one thing or the other. But also about love, like real love. And the videos were the first time I really started to question of the fact that, do we actually know what real love is? And that maybe there's a different kind of love than what I had experienced. And I'm going to say the love I experienced mostly in my life, like the rest of you, is kind of in inverted commas. It's I discovered is not actually what love that I thought love could be. So it just answered lots of questions and created more in me. And so I carried on listening to other videos. And then I was really fortunate that within a couple of weeks, Jesus and Mary were coming over to England to give some talks. And I went to those talks, slightly wary because New Age movement, as a lot of you know, is full of gurus and masters and people claiming to be quite special and unique. Well, there's nothing wrong with being unique, but unique in a more egotistical way. And I went along, and there was this down-to-earth, humble, kind man just sharing what he knew, and without judgment. And just there was something about him that I can't describe. Nothing magical, just something really sincere about him. And I loved everything he was saying. He answered a question. I had a very big question about my son that I asked, and the answer he gave made complete sense to me. But it also gave me hope. It empowered me, and I walked away from that talk thinking, so I've got the power to change my soul. I kind of knew I had some kind of idea that my choices were going to impact my life, but I hadn't. There was always these missing pieces, and I think because the Divine Truth teachings are so kind of solid, they are like jigsaw pieces coming together, that it's much more truly empowering. Because what I've found in the past is I might find a particular thing that helps me, and I might take a step forward, but then I'd crumble again, and I was always confused about why I would crumble again. And then the Divine Truth teachings are telling me that I've got a soul full of emotions I haven't felt. Lots of sadness from my childhood, lots of fear and terror and anger and things that I haven't expressed, because by that time in my life I'd learnt to manage and control my emotions very well. In fact, I now realise I've been doing that all my life, and that's what I was taught when I was a kid. It wasn't safe to express emotions in our house as a child. You were told to, the British culture is full of this stiff upper lip. We don't like intense emotions being expressed. It's just part of my upbringing. And then as an adult, I just sort of carried on with that pattern to survive, ignoring my childhood trauma. And so I discovered all these things are like, well, this explains a lot. It's because there's this stuff stuck in my soul that I need to clean off. And I'm being told that I can clean it off. And if I do it with God's help, I can do it a lot faster. So my eyes were kind of, wide open. It took me a while to shake off some of the New Age stuff. It took me a while to examine what I felt about reincarnation and things, because Jesus was teaching very different things about reincarnation. And if you're interested, there's some talks in 2012 on the Divine Truth website or YouTube channel called The Truth About Reincarnation. They're not the only places that Jesus talks about reincarnation, but that can give you a summary of what he says. Because I was in that, when I got involved in the New Age movement, I started to sort of believe or be pulled into this reincarnation belief that we have many lives. Though I must say, by the time I found Divine Truth, that was one of the belief systems I was questioning a bit. I think it was Neil Donald Walsh's book with his 569 lives that made me think, this is really weird. This guy's done 569 lives and he still hasn't learnt his stuff, and he's still having issues with women. This is weird to me. How many lives do we have to have, and why do we forget what we've learnt? It just didn't make sense. So Jesus had a different truth about reincarnation, and as time went on, I started to learn more. I started to go, yeah, this makes much more sense. And suddenly all my memories of past lives kind of disappeared, because when I realised it was just me sensing spirits' lives, and they knew that I'd discovered that, then the whole thing separated. So just lots of really powerful truths, and that I can have a life after this physical life has ended, that my life continues. So it gave me real hope that I can keep continuing in life. So it was amazing. And this really is the honeymoon period of when you find divine truth teachings, is that first period you're like passionate and it's all you can, you're thinking about it all the time and you're excited by all this universal information that you're getting, and you're like, wow, and I'm about to do this, I'm about to do that, and this is incredible, right? And then reality kind of hits home. You're suddenly confronted with the fact that you've got all these emotions in you, and there isn't just an on and off switch where you can just let them all out in a period of like a couple of weeks. And then you discover that you've put layers on top of the layers, that you've created systems in your soul to manage those emotions that are unhealthy, like addictions, whether that's codependency with people, emotional addictions, or whether that's the way you eat, what you smoke, drink alcohol, spend hours on social media, all these millions of very clever little schemes we've created in addictions to avoid feeling the pain that we've still got inside from our childhood and other events. So, and then also discovering that basically my hurt child is buried under this sort of facade and addictions that I've created and that we've all created to live. And then somewhere buried underneath all that is a real version of me. And so you suddenly getting confronted with the fact that you've got all this stuff in you, but also what you discover is that the techniques that you've developed to suppress these emotions are damaging you, damaging your physical body, your spiritual body, but they're also really damaging to the world around you and the people around you. And you just get confronted with all this stuff over time. You get to discover that you're not quite as good a person as you thought you were. You discover that you've got some really bad habits, and you discover that you're angrier than you think you are. That you have potentially rage and anger and hatred in you that you're denying. That your addictions means you treat people like crap at times, or you've developed passive aggressiveness or passivity, or just being passive, which also is harmful. So you just discover a lot more yuckiness about yourself that you didn't know was there. And that's really confronting. And so then what happens then is you go through these really, like I did, periods of resistance of like, I don't want to feel it, or denying that it's even there, deluding yourself about some emotions and it's not really the real emotions, and telling yourself you're doing okay when you're not doing okay. It's so different from the way we live in the world and what we've been taught, that there's this huge thing about having to unlearn so much, as well as face the truth of who you are. But just to also just broaden that out a bit, you also discover this other part of who you really are. Is there's this real self, this real personality that God created, that's just perfect and beautiful and amazing. And it's a struggle to find that. And I think for me, part of it was the confrontation was eventually got to the point after I went to Australia in 2019 and spent some time with Jesus and Mary and the God's Way organisation, is that I remember coming home from England and like being in shock. That's what it felt like. And I went kind of out of it for 6 to 9 months, I think. I think some of that was sulking and angry. Some of that was just, I have not got a clue who I am. Who is this person I've been for most of my life? Where's the original Maxine gone? In Australia they kept saying, we don't feel we've seen the real you, Maxine. And I was confused, because I now realise that, my facade had got so strong that my survival techniques had become so finite and detailed and become such a habit that I have thought that my facade was me. At this time, I can see that my facade was very far from me. And so so there's this honeymoon period, and then there's all these different moments of confrontation. And many people walk away when they get confronted with their facade and things, and many people get angry at Jesus and the teachings. It's not that I haven't had periods of feeling angry about the teachings. I've never, I might be wrong here, but I don't feel I've ever been angry at Jesus and Mary personally. But I have been more in a tantrum than anger. That's that, which is similar, but have a kind of tantrum about what's just been told me, and like, what do I do with this? And that means I've got to do something, and I've got to take some action. Oh no, I've got to get out of my comfort zones. Oh no, but what will I do without my addiction? What will I do without my cup of tea or whatever it is to comfort me? So it's not a smooth journey. However, because of all the things I'd investigated before, I think, because of the journey I'd already been on in my life, I still knew that I'd found the truth, and I was still fascinated always, even in those moments when I sort of felt confronted and resistant and sulky and tantrumy, that it was like really annoying almost, of like, no, I know this is the truth, and I know what he's saying about love, and I've got some feeling that, things haven't been great for me, and that maybe I've not been great around other people because of my behaviour, and I've, all these things. I couldn't deny what I discovered. I had some sense of how precious it was, that it was a gift, and it was, I don't know, in some ways more real than anything in this world I discovered. So I've stuck with it. And I think over the last 10 years, I've had moments when I've started to progress and do better. And then for something or some addiction with a person, particularly a relationship, has pulled me backwards. I have had a tendency to be very led by others, to not understand my own needs, so detached from my real self. I've often haven't known what I really want, or haven't dared to say what I really want. I've been in so much fear of attack and judgment, and that fear has grown and grown over the years because I've ignored what's really going on. I wasn't always conscious I was ignoring it, obviously, but I've just, those layers of fear have built up, and living in that amount of fear makes you very open and vulnerable to harm from others, but it also creates behaviours in yourself that harm others. But one of my issues is to do with, particularly with relationships, where I put the man in a higher place than myself and keep myself down low, and then it leaves me kind of scrabbling to find myself. And then eventually, I think in my late 40s, it got to the point where I was actually just really pissed off underneath lots of people, and sometimes not behaving very well with friends or with partners. And I think it's I've lost track of what I was saying. So I think, sort of having those moments of progressing a bit, then falling by the wayside again, getting back into living in fear, getting back into addictions, and getting back into that facade again. So it's a battle. It does feel like a battle of your soul. We have a lot of influence around us, both in the physical world and the spirit world, that want to pull us back to where we were. And for some reason, people seem to be threatened when people start to become more their real selves. It's just strange dynamics that go on. But I have stuck with it because I do have this feeling of it is the truth. And I feel like the last 18 months particularly, I've started to really understand more of it in my heart. So intellectually, I think mostly intellectually the first 8 years, with the odd little moment of good stuff. But now I feel like it's finally starting to click that I need to be more self-responsible about my emotions and my behaviour and my choices, and also to face my fear, to feel my fear actually. And so this year I've been making an effort to do the opposite of what fear dictates. The biggest challenge for me has been this sort of terror of feeling intense emotions I have inside me. This is my biggest challenge right now. But confronting other fears and making choices opposite to what fear dictates this year is starting to have results, and I feel better. I feel the feedback that's coming through the law of attraction to me is saying keep going with this, because actually the more you feel a fear and do something anyway, you realise the fear was just a feeling, and it was never telling you the truth, that no big disaster happened actually, and you're fine. You rode the wave, you got through it, and you come out the other side. So it's been a powerful thing, and it's definitely a lot more work to be done in that area for me, but I just need to keep going with it. And the other thing is really looking at my sin and awakening to that sin, and starting to much more honestly acknowledge the harm I'm doing to others. So that's a really key thing, is that often, sometimes, again, with this path, you can start to focus on your emotions and who's harmed you. But most of the pain and suffering in our life, in the end, particularly by you get to my age, is come from your unloving behaviour towards others, intentional or not. And if you live in fear, if you suppress your emotions and from your childhood, you will automatically have some unloving behaviour in you. Not as much as some of us get, because we do always have choices all through our life, even if we've had a terrible childhood. And some people have terrible childhoods but don't go out and go into loads of addictions and codependency with people. Unfortunately, that's what I did, but that's that's what happens. We sort of, I think what I see mostly in the Western world is we tend to go for the addictions. We've got so many things that we can use to distract ourselves, and so many people willing to be in addiction with us, that's the way we go particularly. So my journey with divine truth has been slow. And I think a lot of us can probably have had similar journeys, but there have been a small group, it's still a small group, that really have shown that when you really embrace it, when you're really open to accepting the truth, no matter what that truth is or how confronting it is, when you really desire to love, when you really put all your focus on connecting with God, then you are going to progress faster, obviously. So I think that's the other point I want to make as well, is focus. When Jesus says focus on your relationship with God, I think a lot of us kind of go, yeah, and we need to go, yes, because I have put a bit more effort into my relationship with God, and with my guides as well, and again, that's having results. It's again, I'm not going as slow. I was slow for 8 years. So for me now, I'd like to go faster, but I'm going at the pace I am. But I feel more sincere in what I'm doing at the moment. I'm still making mistakes. A bit more forgiving of my mistakes. I've stopped self-bashing as much. That was really a block. Self-judgment is just a bad addiction, and doesn't help with anything. It makes you go the other way. So that also is a shift, is to keep reminding myself to not do that, and ask why I'd want to do that. And the other part is, being curious about my real self. That's really helped me. So I spent the last couple of years experimenting with different things. I don't know, listening to webinars, joining different groups. Most of them I've ended up leaving, and once I've started and feeling into it, I thought, no, this is not it. This is not me. This is not the thing I'm really passionate about. And then I'm gradually getting to things where I'm like, yeah, I'm actually really passionate about this. In fact, if I look back over my life, there's a thing that pops up again and again and again. So creativity is one of them, doing art and writing and making, and whether it's woodwork or clay, I don't care. My hands just itch to create, and I love doing anything creative. So that discovering that my facade is very, very dull compared to the real me. And And then, like, I don't know who I'm going to end up being. I think the discovery of your real self is an interesting journey. I think sometimes when I discover a bit of my real self, I get a little bit overexcited. Whether that overexcitement is the real me or not, I don't know. But I love feeling that childlike thing as well. I haven't felt that for a long time, that childlike playfulness that's back in again some of the time. So this is thanks to divine truth. And I also just want to say, that Jesus and Mary, the more I've got to know them, they're just two people are so easy to love. They remain humble. And I know a lot of Christians will say it's terrible that he's saying he's Jesus and everything else. But it makes no sense to me that somebody that's teaching the truth is going to lie about his identity. To me, that makes sense. When I was involved in the Christian church, being me, I did extra studies. I also did some studying at school around religion and learning the history of the Bible and the church and everything else. And I've read other books on it. And I actually walked away from the church with the feeling, I got fed up with hypocrisy in the church at the time, the feeling I left was that Jesus was this great teacher who came to teach something very powerful and very pure, that I didn't understand the Trinity, and I didn't understand a God of love would crucify his only son. So I came away with this feeling that maybe Jesus was just this master teacher, a good bloke who discovered something, was encouraging us to drop some of the stuff like from the Old Testament, the idea that God was a genocidist or chose special people or anything like that, and that he was just this really brave, loving person who discovered something and was trying to share that with us. And it turns out that he is that. So I don't know whether that's been involved in me accepting him as Jesus a bit more easily. I don't know if I'm 100% there or not. But calling him Jesus is very easily rolls off my tongue, because I think he knows who he is, and I think Mary knows who she is, and who am I to question that? But I think we do need to look at what we feel about that. But they are so humble. They are the most loving people I've ever spent time with, and the fruits that they bear is evidence. They walk their walk. They're not just talking out their arse, talking about truth and love. They live it every day. They live every day in their relationship with God and their relationship with each other, and then their relationship with the rest of us. They have given us a gift. I think the world is, or myself even, has no idea how big a gift it is that we're receiving right now. To come from spirit world and such high condition of love that they were in, down to this place, which is hell at times. I can't imagine what a gift that is. So a lot of the negative stuff on the media is just silly, and it's not true. The truth is confronting. The world's in a mess. It needs confronting. I mean, if we don't confront all the details of why we're in such a mess and why we make such negative choices, what else is going to change things? You can't pussyfoot around anymore. Things are in a terrible way. Our morality is terrible. The way we live, the risk we're putting at all of our existence at the moment is just crazy. And to me, that needs to be confronted. And divine truth is the only thing that confronts all of that in a really direct, clear and honest way. And yes, it's something we will not want to hear at times, but we need to hear it. And in fact, so Jesus is very clear and direct. You may not like everything he says initially. You will find some things confronting. You will get confused. You will feel like you're in this battle between the world and God and divine truth. But I have absolutely no regrets. I know I'm not in a cult. I'm free to do everything I want every day. No one tells me what to do. I can choose anything I want. There is no fence around Jesus and Mary's house. They do not live in a compound with other people. They live in a little house on their own, like a normal couple, doing their thing every day. It's just that they also do teachings and involved in other projects that they enjoy. And none of us in the sort of who listen to Divine Truth get told what to do or what to say or anything else. Not one of us. And we all live very separate lives across the world, doing our own thing, being involved with our families and friends as much or as little as we want to, making our own free choices. But Divine Truth is not about Jesus and Mary, it's about God. Jesus and Mary are teaching that having a relationship with God, receiving God's love into your heart, is the transforming thing to do for your life, the most healing, complete healing you can ever have in your life, and the way to the kind of happiness that God wants us to have. And that's what the teachings are about. Divine Truth, Jesus and Mary are just the teachers. They're just the teachers and the channel for the information. They've lived for 2,000 years with their experiences with God, and so they know what they're talking about. But ultimately, you can seek God and seek a relationship with God and ask for God's love without Jesus and Mary. You know, this is the point. We're actually encouraged to be self-responsible, not to be dependent. And their own relationship, watching it grow and watching them love each other more and more again, is just amazing and inspiring. And there's so many beautiful truths in Divine Truth, so many beautiful truths. And if you're curious, keep listening, keep taking action though. It's no good listening to hours and hours of videos if we don't take action, if we don't start looking at why we're not feeling emotions. I delayed doing that for far too long since hearing Divine Truth, and I don't recommend it because you just end up in more pain. The more you and quicker you can embrace it, the better. But the truths there's so many beautiful truths about so many aspects of life. It gives great hope. The Divine Truth website, divinetruth.com, is where you need to go if you want to get some information about Jesus and Mary, and there's access to all the videos there. But also you can go to the Divine Truth YouTube channel, or Divine Truth FAQ channel, or Divine Truth Clips channel, and there's now lots of other people who've made different clips from the Divine Truth videos out there as well to listen to. And people like myself have made blogs talking about our journey with Divine Truth, and also the best books in the world are the Robert James Lee trilogy, Through the Mists, The Life Elysian, and The Gates to Heaven. Really fantastic information in there, and also fantastic information in the Paget messages. Some channeled information by James Paget at the beginning of the 20th century. So those books are great because they help correct a lot of teachings, false teachings that the church have created and people have created, and other things. They really confront a lot of false beliefs in those books, but also give you details about spirit life and the kind of life that we can all lead. And this is the exciting bit, is like I've got a lot of things to correct in myself, but none of us, not one of us, no matter how much bad we've done, no matter how bad we feel about ourselves, God has not forgotten one of us, not one of us, and he's calling us all home. And the pain and suffering that we're in this world at the moment is because we're out of harmony with God's truth, and we're out of harmony with God's love. And it's a loving correction system, which is calling us home, not to be dominated, controlled, or manipulated, or not be ourselves, the experiences we might have had with our parents and our families, but to be actually, strangely, be in a closer relationship with our true parent God, but to have more freedom and to be truly ourselves, to live and love with our soulmates, our ideal partners, and to express ourselves and live a happy and joyful life. God wants that for all of us, and we are all redeemable. So I can't say that word very well. Redeemable. No, I'll try again. Redeemable. We can all wash the mud off of ourselves. We all can be changed and make good choices and learn to be very different. A lot of unlearning to do and a lot of learning to do, and it's all emotional and it's all soul based, and it's all faster and deeper and richer if you do it by opening up to God's love, because when you feel that, and then you start to, one, know God is real, and two, to know that God is good, to me there's not much else to know. I hope that helps you. Take care. Goodbye.